This video is going to be a start to finish walkthrough of my oil painting process for portraits. I'm aiming for about 15 or 16 minutes. We'll see where the final version ends up, but let's go ahead and dive right into the painting. So what I've got on screen is the initial structural outline for this figure study. It's of a woman with her head in her hands, kind of lounging. There's going to be a couch there as well. As usual with my initial outline, I start with thinned down paint that's thinned down with linseed oil. It's just kind of a middle hue and tone, a brownish sort of color, using burnt sienna and raw umber, cadmium red, and yellow ochre. So I kind of blend that up, thin it down, and then just sort of try to piece together the outline, the structural outline of the subject. Mostly just trying to keep in mind proportions, try to get the right angles for the head, and connect the frame of the body in an appropriate way. I'm not really worried about details at the beginning. I'm just trying to get the right position and the right proportion. That's not always as easy as easier said than done in some cases. Sometimes I have to kind of push that thinned down paint around a little bit to try to get the right position down if the initial laydown isn't correct. So once I have that structural outline in there, I start blocking in different colors. I've mentioned in other videos, I often start with kind of a middle, again, similar to the outline, middle color, or even just looking at the values, trying to get something that's kind of roughly in the middle, with the idea that I'm going to probably cover over parts of that later in the painting. Once I've got kind of a middle base down, in this one it was very heavy on the yellow ochre. There was definitely that tone in the overall piece, so I definitely pushed that early in the painting. Once that middle tone is down, as you can see, I've got some darker colors in there. I really went heavy on the raw umber on this one. Sort of blended the raw umber up with some ultramarine blue where appropriate, and with some of that yellow ochre and more of the cadmium red if I needed kind of a pinkish hue to it. Just started blending that in, laying down some different contrasts, trying to see if I could capture some shadow areas appropriately. In this particular piece, so often when I'm getting in there with some additional color values, kind of getting dark and light sections like I have on the painting right now, often the head shape will start to look a little indistinguished. So sometimes I like to, if the light is appropriate for this, I like to start to frame the head through the shadows of the hair where it hangs down, particularly with female subjects with longer hair. That way I can kind of shape and frame the cheekbones and where the eyes are, and get some of the face's shape down. I've found as I gain experience, I try to worry less about lines and more about blocks of color and specific like pieces that match or make sense in whatever shape that takes, rather than a discrete line. That's not always the case. Sometimes, of course, you do need lines, but suggesting things is something that I've really been trying to work on. So here I tried to do that face shape framing using that darker raw umber. I didn't quite get exactly where I needed to be, and that kind of leads me to something else that I wanted to talk about with this piece, and that is, it's one of the real benefits to painting with oils, is that the paint can really be pushed around the painting surface to really an amazing degree. There's a tendency, like my mindset coming from mostly drawing with wax-based colored pencils. With colored pencils, once you've laid down enough wax from that pencil, you use up the tooth that's remaining in the paper. There comes a point where you can't lay down any more pencil marks. You're kind of done, whether you like the way it looks or not. There's just not any room to put down more pencil material. So That's not the case with oil paints as much. There's a lot more flexibility built into it. You can push the paint around. You can wipe it off with a paper towel, and if you didn't like something, there's a lot of ability to power through rough patches in a painting. So like with this one, earlier in the painting, I wasn't happy with the way the face looked, the shape of the overall head. I wasn't happy with the way the features looked. But rather than get discouraged, which I did admittedly do early in my painting attempts like a year and a half ago, but now I don't get discouraged. I just push through the painting. I just keep going. So even if I didn't like those feature positions or whatever, I didn't like the way it looked, just move to something else, like put down some of the background, start working on some of the clothing of the subject, then come back to the face, come back to the features that were giving you trouble with a fresh eye. Really examine your reference photo or whatever reference you're using, and just come back to it. Try again. Try looking at those discrete little patches. Like, again, think of it in terms of shapes. Is there this little triangle shape or this little blotch that all seems to be roughly the same contrast and roughly the same color? Lay that in there. Try to blend that color out again. Lay it down again. See if it can look better. That's one of the big things that I've learned about oil painting, is just you can always try again. And I guess that's something that's kind of specific to alla prima, to the wet on wet painting style, where you're working a lot like Bob Ross, or you're just working in one session. The paint is still wet on your canvas or on your paper, and you're pushing paint around. That's a lot of fun, and it's great because you can just keep after it. So like on this one, early versions of this I wouldn't have been happy with if I was locked into that, but I wasn't locked in at all. I could just keep going, keep working the paint and trying to lay it in. So at this stage in the painting, I got to a pretty decent point with the subject. There were still some aspects of it that were really unfinished, but I moved on to the couch because I was really interested in the couch here. This reference photo is one that I think I found. It was either like an AI thing, or maybe I saw it on Reddit, like a painting prompt thing. I can't remember now, but it was a really interesting reference because the contrast between the couch and the black hair of the subject and kind of the gray walls, I thought was like that orange was really interesting to me. So I wanted to do this mostly because of the colors that were shown there, just to try to test it out. And also, I'd never painted a couch like this before, which is kind of weird, but I liked the divots in the couch where there's kind of like material that folds in. That's something that I'd never tried before. Oddly specific thing, but I thought it was interesting. And the painting there as well is kind of cool. Getting to do a painting within a painting. That's like an Inception type thing. I find funny. It makes me laugh. But so anyways, back to the painting. So got the couch in there, and so we're almost to the point here, depending on audio editing. I'm not sure exactly where that will land, but there was actually a point in this painting where I thought I was done. I guess I could use done in quotation marks, like air quotes, because done for me is, I think, different than done for professional portrait artists. I'm very much an amateur who's still trying to learn portrait painting. For a professional, there's like a degree of perfectionism where they would spend dozens of hours refining and perfecting a portrait, even to the point of doing a portrait over again, or really spending a lot of time on intricate detail. For me, though, because I recognize that I'm learning, my objective is often to just paint. I need to paint. I know that I need to practice. So I'm trying to churn out paintings. And since I'm doing it in my spare time, like after work and on the weekends, that's what I'm trying to do. And I want fresh subjects because I want to practice different things. I want to practice different figure positions. I want to try to practice some different expressions if I can, different angles for the subject's face and for the subject's body, and sometimes even different backgrounds. Although I haven't done a great job of mixing up the backgrounds too much. I've tried to do more nature scenes. That's kind of a work in progress, I think, trying to vary the backgrounds. But raw practice is really what I'm looking for. So often when I get to right around this is something that I've discussed before in other videos, but right around the 2-hour mark or somewhere approaching 3 is kind of my max, but 2 hours is kind of a sweet spot for me for especially a figure study with a background. 2.5 hours is good. Once I get to that point, I am probably done. I have an internal timer that will click off and it will tell me, all right, let's move on. With this one though, that was true to an extent, and I left the painting, but I actually ended up coming back to this one because looking at it, I just wasn't satisfied with the figure, and I felt like there was more potential that I could unlock here. I thought that I could touch up certain aspects. It wasn't a painting that I was especially proud of, and I thought, maybe I can turn this into one that I'm proud of. Maybe I can turn it into one that I look back on a little more fondly that I like. Because I do have that kind of self-criticism thing where I think a lot of artists have it, where they look back on a lot of the stuff that they do and they think, oh, this is awful, especially if it's old. If it's an older thing, they might beat themselves up about it. So I tend to do that too. I think it's justified on some of the paintings that, there's certainly things that could have improved, but I might kind of beat myself up a little too much about some stuff for maybe less justified reasons, particularly considering my experience level, which is only like 1.5 years. Honestly, everyone should probably give themselves a little grace to learn and to grow. With this one, I did go back into it to try to clean up some of those aspects, particularly details within the subject. The face was okay. I did touch up the face a little bit more, but I wanted to refine some more aspects of the clothing and try to get some of the shadows where the subject touches the couch and some of those areas where I could still see a little bit of the underpainting. Those sections that I mentioned towards the beginning that should be painted over eventually, but in this one, for an artist who's trying to move on and keep going and keep rolling, I just kind of neglected some of those areas and skipped them. Refining those and adding some real color to them rather than just the underpainting was something that I definitely wanted to do. Another thing that I was unsatisfied with about this, which I partially fixed, was the position of the subject. I mentioned trying to get in that loose underpainting, trying to get the structure right and the position right. I failed to do that here. I didn't get the right angles. I think I got the right proportions, but not the right angles. I didn't get a good tilt for the head. I didn't get a right body position angle either, which is unfortunate because was one of the main points of this that I wanted to hit. I was able to fix some aspects of that by making the subject's left shoulder the right side of the painting for us. By making that shoulder larger, a little bit larger, I kind of fixed some of the perspective problems here, but of course not all of them, because I don't get the impression that the subject is actually resting her head on her hands, more like her hand is touching her face, but her neck is keeping her head upright. And that's not actually what I was trying to do. So what came out of it was not exactly what my intent was as an artist. So that's unfortunate, but probably a casual observer wouldn't notice that. So anyways, that's kind of all I have for this walkthrough. I think we're right about at the end of this painting, so I'll go ahead and wrap this one up by saying that, as always, definitely let me know in the comments if you have any questions or want to talk about anything related to this. Hopefully this walkthrough wasn't too long. I'm still not exactly sure about what the appropriate length of a walkthrough painting video should be, but I appreciate you watching, and I certainly hope that I'll see you for the next video.